Well, hello YouTubers, and welcome back to the Wholesmithshire channel and take 3 of this episode of Zerks&Wheels. I've been having some technical difficulties with my microphone here. The clip broke off, so I kind of jimmy rigged it together to kind of get it to work. Hopefully this trip we get some sound in there and you guys can hear what's going on. Didn't help on the last take that I plugged into the wrong jack on the camera, so I have to start all over again. Anyway, with those faux pas out of the way, today's episode is going to be dealing with prevention of corrosion in static joints and moving joints in woodworking machinery. This old joiner here was pulled out of storage. My brother is going to be buying it, and so I overhauled it for him. Just to get it back to working order. It's not a full restoration, it's just a reconditioning back to working order. There were some corrosion issues, like I say in the thing, where it had been sitting for a while. Now, what happens with machinery that sits in unheated buildings or buildings that are heated part-time, like say for instance a lot of people have their woodworking machinery out in the garage and they don't heat the garage constantly, or their shop, and so what happens is as the machine or the shop warms up, condensation will form inside the machine on the surfaces that, you know, where there's a temperature differential. It's the same thing when you walk in out of the cold with your glasses on and your glasses fog up. That warm air creates a differential in the relative humidity around that immediate surface where there is a temperature differential, and so you get condensation that forms. And that condensation is deadly for steel parts. Now, a lot of us work with MDF. I mean, it's a material that really wasn't all that prevalent. You know, like when this machine was built, this is a vintage 1977, so back then MDF really wasn't all that prevalent. And so it was built more for, you know, everyday use of just normal grown wood. And for that, you know, for that purposes, it's just fine. It doesn't generate a lot of fine dust. MDF is basically a material where it goes through a digester, the same as, you know, wood fiber wood for making pulp or paper, and or corrugated cardboard. Actually, it's a precursor. You know, it's essentially corrugated cardboard, only with the same lignin content and yada yada yada. Only it's been more compressed and formed into a thicker board. It's essentially all it is. So you get a lot of fine fibers in the structure of that engineered wood product. Now, when you start working it on machinery, it generates an even finer dust, and that dust can get in just about anywhere. I mean, it's horrible where it gets into places. Like, here's some pictures of some of the parts of the machine that were exposed to just dust falling on the surfaces and then absorbing atmospheric moisture and causing corrosion. Now, as you can see, that was, you know, pretty crazy considering this machine probably only dealt with, you know, off and on with MDF maybe 20 hours at the most, I'm guessing, judging by the amount of dust that was in it. It wasn't very much, let's put it that way. Most of the dust accumulation that was in the machine was just from sitting in storage, you know, the stuff that was in the air, and it just kind of drifted and fell on it and was able to pile up in places where, you know, dust normally piles up. But anyway, what we're doing here is I tore down the machine and covered up some of the static joints where the machine was bolted together, like right here. So here's the base of the machine, or I should say the stand with motor, and here's part of the base over here at the top of the frame, and here's the table laying upside down on its head, so to speak. Then over here we have a side part and the table, and there should be another frame piece laying around here somewhere. It's probably at a frame deck there behind the thing there. So let's walk around here and look at the other parts. Okay, on this base, part of the base here, you can see right around here where some of the MDF dust was present. So I wasn't able to get the Scotch-Brite to take this off because of this pin, and I really don't want to take it out, you know, just for shits and giggles. And then you see, of course, here too, this is a static joint, and this one was really bad right here for the staining. Managed to get that all out of there with the Scotch-Brite pad, and get it cleaned up. So now the object of the day is to go ahead and coat these surfaces with copper paste, so wherever the frame makes contact here with the outside part, so this is part of what the damage you were seeing right here. This is a contact surface that goes right onto here, and that's what caused that. So there was a lot of staining here too, and here we have some pitting. This is actually exposed to the elements, so to speak, where this is open air. This is where the head is, and so down here too, this is all open, and there was a little bit of an accumulation of MDF dust, and that's what caused that. It just tends to accumulate and gather water and build paste, so to speak, and then start corroding the cast iron in there. And here you see the other part of the base, which is upside down. This actually this part here makes contact with the base of the machine, and so you can see where the MDF dust had laid up against it. Now this isn't a critical surface, so it doesn't really matter if it's corroded or not, so I'm not going to bother with trying to clean it up a whole lot. It's just not critical, because the base of the machine is actually wood, and it's got a little sheet metal top on it. So anyhow, there's that. And of course, here you can also see some of the staining that has occurred between these stationary joints. Now on the movable joints, I've cleaned these up already because these are critical, but you can still see some staining along here, and this is going to get a lithium grease. First it's going to get a little WD-40 as a penetrant, because cast iron does have pores, and so you need to get deep down in there as much as you can in order to prevent any atmospheric moisture from penetrating the steel or the cast iron here. And of course this hasn't been lapped, these are just machined surfaces, so you can still see the tool marks. And so it becomes critical to treat the surface, the machined surface, where parts glide over one another, and keep those from corroding again. Now here's the cutter head. I worked it over on the lathe and gave it a good coating of WD-40. Now there's a lot of corrosion, maybe you can pick it up. The camera doesn't really like this light in here. Let me see if we can. No, it's not picking it up, but rest assured it's a kind of a nice rust brown in there. And so this is where the knives are and the gibs, and so we ended up treating that so that there's no further corrosion, because the dust does get in here, and this is where it accumulates and compacts during the cutting action. And here's one of the gibs that hold the knives in place, and as you can see there's quite a bit of corrosion in all contact areas of the gib. Bottom is fairly clean, although there is a little bit of corrosion on it. The screws, of course, they're going to have to be all removed, and the threads chased. Now they're going to get some copper paste These are quasi-stationary, but we're not going to put any copper paste on this face. This is the face that actually contacts the knife, and these screws make contact with the wall of the groove. And you can put a little bit of copper paste on this or some high pressure grease is actually the best. Now, as you can see, I can't even turn this with 2 fingers. They're so stiff. This one moves. These should move with just by finger, just a touch of the finger. And unfortunately, these ones don't. This one I actually had to cut, so I got to replace that screw. This one turns somewhat. So these are going to get copper paste on the threads. So now you're probably asking yourself, of course, this is not an unimportant question, although it doesn't, in the grander scheme of things, it's really not all that critical. However, for the intents and purposes of today's video, we're going to treat it as such. And the one is, how do you maximize corrosion protection between static parts? Now, as we know, this has caused this little bit of staining here. So what we want to do is maximize our corrosion protection on all parts. Now, do we need to coat this? No, but we're going to coat this part completely, as it completely covers all the static parts of this joint here. And you can see a little bit of wear here from the tables as they pass. Now the tables will pass along through here, so we don't really need any of that copper paste along here. Because the tendency would be to apply copper paste to this entire part here. So we're only going to apply it here where it's actually needed. And like I said, we're going to cover the entire thing so that this part, the parts that are exposed to the open air, are completely covered and protected. And of course, where this makes contact, it'll be protected. Now down here on this corner right here, this is exposed to the air anyway. This is the discharge part of it. Up here is where the head runs. So it's just going to be one of those things where, how do you go about it? Like I say, we're just going to apply it to this part of the static joint and not to this, because this will get protected through virtue of that. So let's proceed here. Now you don't need a real thick layer of this stuff because a lot of it will squeeze out. You just need to get it covered to where if you see a little bit of iron underneath it, that's fine. That's just kind of the nature of the beast. But you want to get a nice adequate coat so that your surfaces are all protected. Now on this other part, the only thing we're going to do, because the pins are still in it, right here, these alignment pins, we're going to put a little dab right here on the alignment pins, but that's all that this part's going to get, because we want to make sure that those alignment pins don't corrode as well and can release whenever you have to take this thing apart again. And if sun gets on the base of the thing, it's not that critical either. So now we're ready to go ahead and stick our other part back on here and throw some screws in it. Okay, we're going to have to use the rubber mallet here to get this thing seated and put together. Now again, in order to maximize the protection factor of the static joint, you apply the anti-seize compound to the larger surface, because the smaller mating surface will cover it anyway. But you want to try to maximize that coverage, and so you put it on the larger surface, the larger mating surface, so that additional coverage is warranted. And then so when the parts come together and you get that little bit of anti-seize compound that squishes out, it will, of course, join up with, in other words, with the adjacent material and create an additional air barrier along that joint, so that that wood dust, that MDF dust, can't get in there. Neither can moisture or oxygen. So you definitely want to try to eliminate that. So here's some pictures of the cutting head as I was doing it, and also from the rest of the other parts. Now, as you can see, we gave a liberal coat of anti-seize compound, in this case copper paste, to the joints so that they don't rust and seize, or rust and pit and then become inaccurate in the fit. A lot with MDF, I would recommend that if it's in your technical expertise to tear down your table saw, your planer, your joiner, whatever machinery you have that you work with MDF, to do so, and then in static joints like this, apply the anti-seize compound, and then the moving joints, apply a lithium-based grease. And the reason for that is the lithium, of course, being a metal, it provides lubrication, but it also displaces the oxygen and the moisture that potentially can get in the joint and create problems for you. You can use a soap-based grease as well, it's fine, a clear grease as they call it, and you'll be okay, but you just bear in mind that you might have to do this periodically, again and again, every couple of years if you work a lot with MDF. The dust that it generates is just so fine, it gets in wherever it wants to and just creates havoc. So just be aware of that fact, and then prepare yourself accordingly, and you should be fine with your machinery. So anyway, I hope you were able to glean a little bit of useful information out of today's video. If you have any questions, comments, critiques, or suggestions, by all means, put them in the comment section below. Always welcome a little bit of foot traffic, so to speak, in the channel. It helps it grow. It helps, the algorithms. It helps promotion within YouTube. So any of that kind of traffic is definitely duly appreciated. And if there are some serious, deeper questions, I do due diligence to answer those questions. If I don't have an answer forthcoming within, a few minutes of reading the comment, I definitely do due diligence in researching and getting you a proper answer, because a lot of times the questions that the viewership poses are actually pretty good, and require a little bit of thought and or research to provide an adequate answer. So anyway, thanks for stopping by, thanks for watching, and we hope to see you all again very soon in the next video.